Hello, my name is Sam Spiva and welcome to episode 3 of Fresh Daily, where I give you my ideas and updates on the ingredients, recipes, and techniques, as well as stories that have inspired my food journey. So first of all, I want to say a big thank you to all of the people who have tuned in for episode 1 and 2, for those of you who have subscribed to my YouTube channel, as well as liked the Facebook page, shared this content on social media. I appreciate all of you. And I really have gotten some great feedback so far, as well as some suggestions. So first of all, one of the suggestions I've gotten is to include more recipes in the videos. So you'll be seeing some of that in today's video, and videos going forward is some recipes in the video form. And then also people are interested in what gear and equipment I'm using. So in the description on every YouTube video that I put out, you'll start to see links to where you'll be able to see which items I'm using, which pieces of equipment I'm using to produce the recipes and the meals that I'm executing. So check out the description of this video for more info if you're curious. Let's get into it. Today's episode is all about coffee. So I want to tell you about a few different types of coffee I've been using recently and why they're amazing, and also give you both a coffee demonstration, a coffee brewing demonstration, as well as a coffee rub demonstration, which will be in the later half of this episode. So first of all, I want to talk about the coffee. I have been obsessed with this Story coffee. There's a few different types that I've been working with recently. They're Brazilian Pearl Bourbon, Colombia El Lago, and Ethiopia Andaracha. And so all of these are just phenomenal coffees. The Story brand is a coffee roasting company and coffee company out of Istanbul, Turkey. They source their coffee from small farmers in coffee growing regions, and it's just phenomenal. It's an excellent coffee. Each type of coffee, whether it's a type or an origin, where it's grown, how it's processed, it all imparts so many different flavors to the final brew. So depending on what your style is or what you're looking for, there's just so much you can get out of a specialty coffee. For example, their Ethiopia, it's really fruity, cherry, a lot of raspberry. It's really interesting and unlike a lot of coffee that most people have tried. The Colombia El Lago, it's a little bit more of a dried fruit, a little bit darker. It's got some notes of orange juice. It's really juicy, but it also has some richness to it, and it's really a delicious, balanced coffee. Finally, the Brazil Pearl Bourbon. This is the big crowd pleaser, in my opinion, most people's favorite, because it's very typical of what you would find in a coffee, but it's at just another level. So the flavors that come out of this coffee are chocolate, caramel. It's fantastic. It's delicious. So I'm going to work with the Pearl Bourbon today and show you how I brew it with a Chemex, and then I'm also going to turn it into a barbecue rub for pork that is just insane. With coffee, freshness is absolutely paramount to enjoying a good brew. So you want to find roasters either in your area or who will ship often, who have a roasting date that is recent. The next thing is you want to grind the coffee fresh. If you purchase ground coffee, a lot of times it's still going to be great, but if you grind it fresh yourself, you're going to notice that your coffee is at another level. And it's just a lot more fragrant, a lot more flavorful, a lot more of the notes and nuances of the coffee are going to come out if you grind it yourself. So I strongly suggest that you buy freshly roasted coffee and you grind it fresh yourself. So I'm going to grind coffee for Chemex here. I'm going to look for something that is a kind of a medium grind for filter. This right here is a Chemex. Using one of these is my absolute favorite way to brew coffee. I use it every morning. It produces a really nice, clean, smooth, nuanced, and elegant cup of coffee. Okay, let's get brewing. So I have here my Bonavita gooseneck kettle. This is a temperature controlled kettle, which I really enjoy because you can bring the temperature exactly to where you want it. For my Chemex pour overs, I really enjoy using a temperature of 205 degrees Fahrenheit to brew my coffee, so you can set exactly the temp range that you want to bring your water to. I've brought this up to 205 degrees and I'm ready to brew now. I've got my coffee ground here, as you can see, a nice medium grind for a filter that I really like to use for pour overs. So I'm going to go ahead and get started by rinsing out my filter. So when you do this, you are taking a lot of the paper flavor away from the final brew. You don't want to have your coffee tasting really papery, and you're also warming up the vessel of the Chemex so that when your coffee is filtered into here, it's not going to be cold. It's going to be nice and warm to receive the coffee and keep it warm. One other little trick here I forgot to mention is when you open your coffee filter, one side will have a single layer of filter and the other side will have 3 layers. And you want to put the side with 3 layers right on the spout here. That's going to prevent it from collapsing into the spout and taking a really long time to filter. So now that we've got our coffee filter wet and we've drained the water into the sink, we're going to put our coffee that's been ground into the Chemex here and zero out our scale. Everything goes on the scale here and we're gonna zero it out. So I'm gonna start with the initial process here, which is called the bloom. This will allow the carbon dioxide in the coffee to be released before you add more. So I do about 100 grams of water here for this bloom. You can see on your scale the grams are climbing. I do about 100 grams and you can see when it's really bubbly like this, you can see that's a sign of freshness. So if your coffee is not bubbling at all, it's likely been roasted a long time ago and it's really stale. So one thing to look for in really high quality fresh coffees that have been freshly roasted is that they're bubbling like this when you bloom them or pour a little bit of water on them. That's a sign you've got a great fresh coffee. 30 seconds of this bloom. I'll go ahead and start with the rest of the water. You just want to go in slow concentric circles around the coffee, trying to make sure that every part of the coffee is touched by the water so you have a nice even extraction. You want to get close to the sides of the paper, but you don't want to pour directly into the paper. Once you've got all 700 grams in here, you want to let the coffee filter. And I find that a really good extraction time is about 5 minutes. So that's what I'm aiming for. But the biggest piece of advice is if your process is taking much longer than 5 minutes, grind your coffee just a little bit more coarse for this process. Okay, now we're done brewing. It's been just about 5 minutes. Now I have all my ingredients out here to make a delicious rub. This is a rub that I really enjoy using on pork loin or other types of pork. It's pretty good on chicken and beef as well, but pork is where it really shines. So I would suggest giving it a shot. I think a lot of people, when they think coffee rub, they think it's totally gonna overpower the dish, but with the recipe I'm going to give you here, the coffee, it comes through and it shines, but it also gives way to the flavors and the meatiness of pork. I really like using whole spices whenever I can. So I've got my black peppercorns, coriander, and mustard that are all whole. I've got a few other ingredients here that they come ground, brown sugar. I've got ginger powder, paprika, garlic powder, and some kosher salt. So I'm gonna show you how I put it together. And the first step is by grinding my whole spices. I like to use an inexpensive grinder. I just picked this one up off of Amazon a few months back for grinding spices. Okay, so now I have my whole spices returned. They've been freshly ground. I'm going to add the rest of my ingredients into them. My brown sugar, paprika, ginger, garlic, kosher salt, and I'm gonna mix it all together. Okay, so now I have all my spices incorporated. I'm going to add my coffee. So I have fresh whole bean Brazilian coffee here. I'm gonna grind it fine as I can get it with the grinder that I have at home, and then I'm gonna add it to the rub. There it is, I have my finely ground coffee. I'm going to add that into the rub. Mix everything together. That's it, it's now ready to go. I'm gonna be using this for pork or chicken. I think this is a really amazing rub for pork loin. One of my favorite things to make is a coffee crusted pork loin with cabbage, spatzel, glazed carrots. Thank you for tuning in to episode 3 of Fresh Daily. I will see you soon for the next episode. Delicious.